Welcome back, Chelsea supporters, and thank you to all of you that have been tuning into this three-part series where we look at the transfer window and analyze the data. Like, first of all, what we've been doing is looking at the players that have been linked to Chelsea, the targets, and analyzing the data to see if they actually fit with the style of football that's being deployed by Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel. First day, we looked at the defenders. Second day, we looked at the midfielders, and this one is the big one. We're going to be looking at the forwards, the strikers, and comparing and contrasting the data to see if there's a natural fit between the striker and the club. Without further ado, let's get into it.
And blue is the colour. Essien! Drogba! Lampard! That could be the
Greetings! Welcome back to Couch Critic with me, Dennis P, for what is a special edition show where we look at the transfer window. Like I said in the intro, we did the defenders, we did the midfielders, and today we're doing the forwards, the strikers. And we're going to be comparing and contrasting the data to figure out if there's a natural fit between these strikers that are being linked with Chelsea and Thomas Tuchel's football. But before I get into all that, please hit the like button, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you're a real bad fan, you'll hit that bell notification button. You know I have a sponsor. They go by the name of Major League Socks. And fellas, if you ever want to walk in the footsteps of greatness, you know what to do. Hit them up. The link is in the description. Okay, now any Chelsea supporter can attest to the fact that Chelsea just have no luck when it comes to strikers in the transfer market. I mean, throughout the entire Abramovic era, we've just been, obviously there's been spatterings of great signings. You look at the Drogbas, Diego Costas, even the Anelkas, there's been great signings. But for the majority of Abramovic's reign, the strikers that we brought in to play football for this club have just been a minutia of terrible targets. I'm talking about Falcao. I'm talking about Morata. I'm talking about, Lukaku right now. I'm talking about, Shevchenko, Kezman, Torres. The list goes on. And I can go on for hours just about those names, about players that we brought in that we expected to take us to the next level and instead, took us down a level, in terms of like their output and whatnot. And I think the problem is twofold. I think number one, obviously the chopping and changing of the managers, the stylistic changes that have happened have led to us bringing strikers that fit a certain brand of football but may not fit another. And, when the new manager's gone, we still have those strikers there, and they certainly don't play the style of football that, is, on display right now. And, we can't move them for whatever reason because they're not playing enough. They're not showcasing themselves enough under the new manager. So, we're stuck with them. That's one problem. The second problem is that Chelsea have always been a London-based club. They want the marquee signings. They want to appease the corporate sponsors. So they bring in these marquee names with, these hefty price tags and whatnot. And when they don't hit the ground running, if they don't really hit the ground running and start banging in goals right away, it becomes the way the world's on their shoulders, and it's very difficult for them to find their football again. And then the merry-go-round starts again. We got a new manager in and whatnot, and so forth and so on. So what we need to do now under this new regime with the Clear Lake Bully Group is, put an end to that cycle and try and find some targets that actually work with the football that we're trying to play at the club right now. And I got about 4 or 5 names that I'm going to go through, just basically who I think that are in the news right now, who are being linked with Chelsea. And we're just going to basically compare and contrast their data, their stats, and figure out if they actually fit the style of football that Thomas Tuchel wants to play. And again, we have to start by analyzing what it is Thomas Tuchel's forwards want to do. I mean, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what the game plan is when you look at Chelsea's strikers right now, because, you bring in Lukaku for £100 million, and, it leaves you to question what the decision making was. How do you sign off on something like that when you know what style of football you want to play, and that he doesn't necessarily deliver that style of football. Chelsea want to play with a fluid front three when they're at their best. Mason Mount, Werner, Hakim Ziyech, Pulisic, obviously Kai Havertz. All 5 of those guys have been, obviously fits and starts, not necessarily the best, complement of strikers and forwards that you've ever seen. You know, sometimes they're very consistent, they look great, and other times they don't look good at all. And all of that has led to Chelsea having to splash big money to bring in Romelu Lukaku to give them a focal point, a guy that can just finish the opportunities that we've been, you know, presented on an alarming rate. You know, not this year, but the year previously, with Chelsea were getting all sorts of opportunities that would fall to the feet of Werner, fall to Pulisic, fall to Kai Havertz. Doesn't matter who it was, they just weren't going in enough. And, you know, Chelsea thought that, you know, if we brought in Lukaku, who, you know, is definitely a poacher, a guy that you can put in front of goal and he'll certainly score more often than not. If we can get the same sort of like chance creation, the idea is there that, you know, we have somebody now in Lukaku who will be able to finish them off. And, you know, it just reeked of desperation. And, you know, it didn't really fit the style of football we want. We all know that Lukaku wants to be a guy that's running at defenses. He likes to play on the counter. He likes to use his pace and power to beat defenders and whatnot. And, you know, and when you're playing for Chelsea and you got to play low block defenses, you know, he just doesn't possess the ability to manipulate the ball in these small spaces of like maybe 3 to 5, you know, meters apart, where, you know, defenders are really compact and whatnot. And, you know, you can say that about a lot of the strikers that we have at Chelsea right now. You can say that about pretty much everyone. You know, I say the same thing about Kai Havertz. He's nice on the ball and whatnot, but, you know, he's not strong enough to hold it up well enough. He's not strong enough to play in, you know, the half spaces and engage the defense. You know, Pulisic fits and starts, you know, not really taking guys on anymore. You know, Mason Mount probably better suited as a number 8 than he is as a number 10 or an 11. You know, it just goes on. And Timo Verner, again, like very similar to Lukaku, just, you know, not very good in these tight spaces, uses his pace to get in behind, and just definitely not very good in front of goal. Like he often fluffs his lines time and time again. When Chelsea put, you know, opportunities right in his doorstep, you expect him to finish, he can't. You know, Hakim Ziyech, better suited as a winger, you know, as an inside forward, he, you know, is just ineffective. So yeah, the problems start there. I don't think that it's just the finishing that is a problem. It's also the chance creation. Chelsea do not create enough opportunities. So there's a tremendous amount of the pressure on the strikers to finish the chances that they have. They have to be extremely efficient because we just don't create enough opportunities. And I think that those are the things that we're going to be looking at. Like, obviously, we need somebody that's going to be clinical. We need somebody that can create opportunities. And until we can find that synergy between, you know, chance creation and finishing these opportunities, I think we're going to be in and around that 3rd or 4th spot in the Premier League. We're not going to be challenging for those major honors just because we need more goals. Robert Lewandowski is a big name that you know, I would love to see at Chelsea. You know, he's a guy that does everything. You know, he's the complete forward. You know, he's a guy that will score goals for you. He'll make goals for you. He's a guy that will, you know, be bully. He'll hold up the ball. He'll do everything for you. He's exactly what you want in a striker. I don't know if he's necessarily the fit in a fluid system, but he's certainly a guy that if you give him opportunities, you know, he will take them. And that is part of it too. You need somebody that's going to be clinical in front of goal, and, you know, somebody that, you know, when we're only creating like 2 or 3 chances a game, he's taking 1 of them or maybe even 2 of them. He has that quality. So, I mean, he's one guy that I thought about when we're talking about, you know, elite level striker that can take us to the next level, you know, the next level in our ascendancy as a football team. Maybe that the chance creation wouldn't be as high as you would like it to be, but you know, when we create those opportunities, Reece James, Chilwell swinging in crosses, you know that Lewandowski knows what to do with it. You know, he knows to be in the right place at the right time. You know that he has the correct amount of movement, the right amount of movement to get himself into positions where he can score goals. So he'd be the first person that I would look to, and I think that like his ability to get in the good places and whatnot is second to none. And if you add a guy like that to your squad, you've catapulted yourself from being like, you know, a middling team to a team that is challenging for major honors. So he's the first name that I thought of. Obviously, we're not heavily linked to him. Like, I know he has Pini Zahavi as an agent who often works with Chelsea and whatnot, and you know he's not re-signing with Bayern. There is an interest from Chelsea, but, you know, whether or not he can come to Chelsea right now with, you know, with all the rumors having him going to Barcelona is yet to be seen. But I guarantee you, if somebody like that, of that stature, of that ilk, comes to Chelsea, you know, sky's the limit. Now, staying with the Bundesliga, and I know there's all sorts of Chelsea fans that have all sorts of trepidation about that league. I wanted to touch on another striker, attacker that I feel like could actually move the needle in a similar way to Robert Lewandowski, and that is Christopher Nkunku. This guy, I tell you, is exactly what we need in striker, like in a forward as well. He's a guy that scores goals, is very clinical in front of goal. He's a guy that is very good at creating opportunities for his teammates. And in a system like Thomas Tuchel's that is very fluid, like guys interchanging, moving from the left to the right to the middle. And, obviously what you want to see is when you're doing that, you want to see that the ideation is changing as well. So you're playing on the left, you're not thinking about being the goal scorer like some of the guys that, like, if you put Timo Verner out there, he's only thinking about one thing, and that's to score goals regardless of where he is. He's not looking to create opportunities for the guys that are in better positions for him than him. And that's been the problem with Chelsea, for the last couple seasons. Right now we have strikers all over the pitch, but they only have one tunnel vision. When you get out wide, you have to change your mentality as an attacker. You have to think about what you're doing, how you can manipulate the ball to create opportunities for others and whatnot. And so few of those Chelsea attackers have that mentality. It's like they get into these situations where they're attacking, defenders, and it's just tunnel vision. How do I get to the goal? So yeah, with Christopher Nkunku, I think that, like, things that I like about him is, of course, he's clinical, a guy that doesn't need a lot of shots to get those 20 goals. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he took about 80 shots to get his 20 goals, which is very, very effective. Obviously, it's like 20% conversion rate, where like he's taking 1 in 4 to score goals, which is exceptional. That's that level where you want your strikers to be at. That's that elite level. That's the Lewandowski level. That is that Haaland level. That is that Benzema level, where you don't need 4, 5, and 6 opportunities to score goals. You just need 2 or 3, and of those 2 or 3 opportunities, he's either scoring, he's either assisting, or he's putting out a sixpence and somebody else is missing. But what I love about Christian Nkunku is the fact that he's not one-dimensional as a striker. He's not a guy that just scores goals. He's a guy that creates for his teammates. He's a guy that uses his pace. He's a guy that finishes with his left, his right. He can get his head on things as well. Obviously, he's worked with Tuchel before, maybe not in the striker roles very often, because, of course, they had Mbappe, they have Neymar, and they have, obviously back then, they had Cavani as well. So he had to go on loan to find his football. And Manny Ziyech at RB Leipzig right now, he's a guy that, obviously we'd have to pay a mint to get. But like I said before, when you're talking about strikers, you have to pay a mint for strikers, because it's a skill that very few possess. And even less when you think about finishing and creation, shot creation. He's just the perfect fit for Chelsea. I think that we need to, obviously there hasn't been like any solid links right now, and I'm trying to be the one that can help usher that in. But, like, he's the type of guy that I think will help Chelsea that much further. I mean, you look at a guy like Usman Dembele and the things that he can do, the guy that, uses his pace and his technique and his dribbling ability to get in behind, a one-man disruption, that's something that's just not on offer at Chelsea right now. And, you compare him and contrast him to somebody like Hakim Ziyech. And, while they're both out-and-out wingers, they both do damage in very different ways. With Hakim Ziyech, obviously, he's looking to put in that telling ball. He's been very good at that over the course of his career, putting it on the sixpence and whatnot. But in the Premier League, there's just not a lot of time and space for him to deliver that ball accurately all the time. So when you compare and contrast with that with Usman Dembele, a guy that, like, is a dribbler, a guy that uses pace and whatnot, you can see that his skill set and whatnot is much more suited to that of how you need to attack teams in the Premier League. A guy that is very direct, a guy that has, an immense amount of quality technically, and uses it to a devastating effect. I think that what you see is Chelsea would just have a more balanced attack if we can get somebody that is a dribbler, a guy that can, like, distribute, create opportunities for other, again, which is clearly not the only thing that Chelsea need. We need a finisher as well. He's not the greatest finisher, but he is a guy that can create opportunities. And if we can't necessarily move somebody like Lukaku on, and he's going to be at the club next year, which is in all likelihood probably what's going to happen, who knows? A guy like Usman Dembele might be somebody that could, disrupt that back line enough to get him opportunities, 1v1 to score goals. And, you know, currently we just don't have anyone that does that. Christian Pulisic's probably the closest. And for the life of me, I don't understand why he hasn't been taking people on the last little while. Again, he's lost a step or two as well. Like, I think the hamstring injuries and whatnot have, you know, made him less of a blur, a guy that like is very direct and attacking. But, you know, who knows? You partner him with his Dortmund partner in Usman Dembele, and you might be seeing some of that more synergy come back again. And it could only lead to good things for Chelsea. I mean, depending on the wage demands and whatnot, obviously there is a concern there. I don't want to see us paying upwards of like 200,000 for a guy that is injury prone and doesn't necessarily score a lot of goals. Okay, so now we get into a couple of names that have been linked with Chelsea recently, and I'm going to start with, you know, obviously Raheem Sterling, who is another attacker who is on the last year of his deal at Manchester City and is looking obviously to re-up. He's only 26 years old, somewhere in around there. Seems like he's been playing football forever. You know, I still remember the time when he was at Liverpool with Sturridge and Suarez, and, you know, a young kid, maybe like 18 years old, 17 years old, and, you know, doing a madness sometimes too. Went to City, and, you know, his problem was always with finishing. And, you know, I think that under the tutelage of Pep, he's become better, but, you know, I think their system is such that it requires you know, it allows for you to get a lot of opportunities to score goals. And, you know, he scored a fair few, but at the same time, again, we need somebody that is just clinical down there. I mean, as of right now, I would say Raheem Sterling is, if he comes to Chelsea, he would be our best attacker. He would be our best winger without question. I mean, he has blazing pace. He's, you know, technically pretty sound. Doesn't necessarily always pick his head up and, you know, make the right decisions in passing and whatnot, and not a great finisher. But in terms of the things that he can do to, you know, disrupt that back line, you know, really put pressure on the defense, I think that he would be easily Chelsea's best player in that regard. And that is something that is definitely in demand at this club right now, in the similar way to what I was saying about Usman Dembele. You know, but with that said, it's very difficult for me to like really endorse this ringingly, just because I know that his chance creations are not necessarily extremely high, and obviously he's not the most clinical striker out there as well. So, you know, would he be better than what we have on offer right now? Yes, but is that enough to take Chelsea to the next level in their ascendancy as a football team? And lastly, the name that we're going to be looking at is another Man City player who's been linked with Chelsea. It seems like they're just kind of pass off, you know, their dead weight to Chelsea and hope that we can give them a decent transfer kitty to go after some real targets. And of course, I'm talking about Gabriel Jesus, who, of course, is a Brazilian, 22, 23 years old. I'm not quite sure when he came to City. I think it was the same time we got Oscar, if I'm not mistaken, from Chelsea. So very young striker. He's been there for about 5 or 6 years. And, you know, he was supposed to be the heir apparent to Kun Aguero. And, you know, everyone knows that, like, Pep Guardiola, despite all the tears when Kun retired or left Man City, you know, they didn't really get along. He didn't really fancy him as a striker. So when he brought in Jesus, it was the notion that he was supposed to be the heir apparent, the guy that took the reins. And like, he was never able to supplant him as a striker, you know. And, you know, you'll hear a lot of people say that, like, the reasons behind it is because he's not the sharpest thinker in the final third. He's not a guy that thinks the game well enough to really impact it down there. I mean, Man City create, again, a multitude of opportunities for their strikers, and, you know, you'd have to be really poor at finishing to not, you know, score 20, 25 goals a season with those guys, with the likes of De Bruyne, you know, Bernardo Silva, you know, they got Cancelo now. Like, they got a bunch of creators out there that when you see them on display, you expect, you know, their goal scorers, their strikers to score, like, you know, at least 15 to 20 goals a season, easy, you know, like, just blindfolded, really, because of the opportunities that they get. And when you look at Gabriel Jesus, I just feel like he, again, is one of those strikers that takes too many opportunities to get his numbers. And again, he's in a system where they create a lot of opportunities, whereas if he comes to Chelsea right now and he's playing as our number one striker, our 9, and, you know, I just don't know if he creates enough, if he scores enough goals to justify playing him as a number 9 game in, game out. I mean, there is potentially the notion that he is technically good enough to play out wide, which makes him a more fluid attacker, a guy that can play on the right, can play on the left, and then also play down the middle. It makes him it makes him more difficult to mark and whatnot. But again, you're not bringing him to the club because you think that he's going to be able to, beat guys 1v1 and, make that difference in disrupting the back line and, destabilizing the defense. You bring him to the club because you expect him to be a guy that can finish opportunities, get into good areas, create for others, all of these things, right? Like, be a real number 9, hybrid number 9, number 10, false 9 if you want to call him that. I'm of the opinion that this guy just doesn't take enough of the opportunities to play a striker, but you might make the argument that if you play him in the wider areas, he might have more of a goal threat out there. But I don't think that he wants to come to Chelsea to be a winger. I think that he wants to come to be the number 9 if he comes at all. And I'm not certain that him as a number 9 is exactly what we need to push the needle to that next level, as I've been saying. So for me, if he's coming as a number 9 to be the out and out number, striker, then I'll take a pass on that. I'll just deal with whatever it is that we have, and you look to address that a different way at another time. But, if he's looking to be just a part of the club, a guy that can just be, a chance creator, a guy that can dribble, a guy that can, run in behind and whatnot, and then also play that position as number 9, be a more fluid attacker, then it might be interesting. It might be something that could tempt me to thinking that he can be a difference maker in this club. But on current offer, if the idea is for him to be a number 9, I'm just not having it. And there you have it. We've gone through all 5 strikers. We've gone through the defenders. We've gone through the midfielders, all of the targets. Maybe missing a few. Obviously, Kimpembe came up as a defender recently, and there's probably Jimenez is another defender. All sorts of guys that I've kind of just skirted over and not really paid enough attention to. But I'm hoping that I've given you guys some insight into how I see Chelsea's attack and whether or not the statistical data that I've provided here can help support my argument into why I want a certain player at the club and why I don't. In terms of strikers, Robert Lewandowski speaks for himself. This guy's just a killer. One of the top 5 strikers in world football and has been for a number of years right now. You bring him into the side, you're definitely moving the needle, which is what I think Chelsea need to do. Not just shuffle the decks and hope, hit and hope that something's going to happen. When you bring in new bodies, you really need to be targeting players that are going to move the needle for the club. Robert Lewandowski does that. In my opinion, Christopher Nkunku does that as well. I know he's a young striker. He hasn't really had a lot of success in that position, but from what I've seen from him at RB Leipzig, I watched a few games with him involved. I really think that he has what Thomas Tuchel's looking for in an attacker, the ability to create for others and also finish opportunities, get in behind, play in the half spaces, dribble drive, technique, all of the things that you want from a striker in this Thomas Tuchel setup is exactly what I think he has on offer. He's excellent in pressing sequences as well, as I'm sure the data will show. Again, he's a hard worker. He's exactly what I want to come into Chelsea. You look at Raheem Sterling. These guys too, the other thing that we need from our strikers that we don't necessarily focus on is the fact that they have to work extremely hard. Do you liken that to the guys that have been linked to the club? Do you think that Jesus is going to run through walls for Thomas Tuchel the way that, someone like Timo Verner, Mason Mount do? That's going to be what's asked of him in this position, And, you look at Raheem Sterling the same. Does he have that within him to run for days, keep going? It's hard to say. I mean, same could be said for Dembele in that matter too. Is he really good in press sequences to impact us and produce turnovers? That's part of the game too. It's a very difficult position to play because it's not only are you asked to be a clinical finisher and shot creator and finisher, but you also have to be somebody that defensively works your ass off. You have to run and press and be effective in those sequences for Chelsea to be a really good football club. So, it's a lot on demand. It's a lot to ask a lot of these guys, and I don't know if a lot of them are up for it. We've seen Raheem Sterling do it at the City in fits and starts, but who knows if when he has the opportunity to choose where his next destination is, if that's what he wants to do. You know, like he knew under Pep that if he didn't do that, he wasn't going to play. And elsewhere, that part of football might not be on demand. They might not. If he goes to Arsenal, I don't think that he'll have to press as much as he would, you know, at Chelsea. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But fellas, I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed what we were doing these last few days. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm hoping to do more of it coming in the next, few weeks and whatnot. Chelsea start identifying these targets a little bit more. But smash a like. Let me know what you guys think about these strikers. What do you like about them? What don't you like about them? Whether or not they're good fits and whatnot. And always hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Keep the blue flag flying.